is open book quiz for that post-test report. A few questions for you to try again, questions that many people missed, and it'll be an open book way of reinforcing that knowledge too. But now we move on, and we move on to North America, and North America is just two countries. It is only the United States and Canada. That's the smallest of our regions by number of countries, but of course those are two very large countries in area. Canada and the United States, both in the top 5 in the world in land area. United States, of course, is also in the top 5 in population. So these are two prominent large countries. All right, and I'm going to have 3 things everybody should know about America, and here's number 1. Patterns of language in America are not random, but have geographic features and explanations. So I'm going to look at language in America today, and you'll recall we looked at language in Australia as well. And today, most of it will be looking at place names. But let's take a look at a few other elements of geography of language first. So, no, that's not true. We have not reached the end of the presentation. Let's find this and get to the beginning of the presentation. Let's see. Okay, so you see this sort of item every day, right? Maybe it's on your foot, maybe it's on someone else's foot. This kind of item, I'm choosing my words a little awkwardly there, item, because I now want you to type in your answer. What is that you just saw on the screen? What would you call that? Okay, and you see that some answers are coming in, and I'm now going to hide those answers to start. We'll find them again in just a minute. So it's your chance right now to type in what those are, what that was. Okay, I'm going to go another 5 seconds, and then we'll see what you have put in here on menti.com. Okay, here's the answers you have put in. So some of them were plural and some not, and you can see there's some repetition in that way. The word cloud that you see here is designed to have the word get larger the more people say that. Okay, so the most common answer here was sneaker. That is in the largest font. Of course, someone else said sneakers, and so those would be put together. Gym shoe and gym shoes, we would put those together. Shoe and shoes we would put together. And we have one, at least one saying tennis shoe. Okay. Well, it turns out that your answer to this is somewhat affected by your geography. Where are you in the United States? In the northeast part of the United States, sneaker is quite predominantly the answer. Majority of people in the northeast part of the United States will say those are sneakers. 2 of those shoes, sneakers. Yes, you can find people all across the country who will say this too, but it's especially common there. Tennis shoe is now a little bit old-fashioned. You can find people across the country who will say that, tennis shoe. And if I don't pause to think, that would be my immediate reaction. Because when I was growing up, that's what we all called those shoes. Those were tennis shoes. Yeah, if you went to play tennis, you called them tennis shoes, but it became generic somehow too. I haven't played tennis in decades now, but again, if I didn't pause to think, that's what I would say. I think more recent is gym shoes, and that's probably better because it's not just tennis that is used using those shoes. A variety of sports and activities use those kind of shoes, and well, we wear them for daily comfort too, don't we? All right, now this type of beverage, it says cola on there. I'm not worried about that word. I'm thinking though a carbonated sweetened beverage. A carbonated sweetened beverage. I'd now like you to type in what that is. What would you call that carbonated sweetened beverage? I'll go 10 seconds and then we'll find out what you think. All right, here are your answers. So pop and soda look to me like they have the same size font and are thus tied for the most common answers. But you have a few other things there as well. Well, it turns out that this one is even more geographic. There are some distinctive geographic patterns here as to what people say where in the United States. And here's a map that looks at this. This map was put together based on counties. So you see each county border is there and then each county is shaded. And the shadings, yes, tell you what people say in those places. So the yellow to kind of a muddy color, those are where people say soda, where that is the most common answer. And the muddier the shade is, the higher the percentage of the people in that county who say soda. 80 to 100%, the muddiest part there, those people are saying soda. Well, clearly that's not just random, is it? It's not just some everywhere randomly distributed. There are clear clusters. And again, the northeast part of the United States is one of those places. They're saying sneakers, but they're also saying soda. Look over in Wisconsin. That's interesting. The eastern side of Wisconsin says soda, but not so much in the western side. And there's something broadly around St. Louis, Missouri there, and into southwestern Illinois and part of Missouri, people saying soda. And then out in California and Arizona as well. But other people are saying pop. Pop is common in the Midwest and all the way out to the Pacific Northwest with Washington and Oregon. That you see, of course, is the blue. And the darker the blue, the more people in that county, the higher percentage people in that county who are saying pop. But then we're still left with the red shades. And the red shades are where people say Coke. I find this one a bit weird. For instance, you could be in a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia, and the wait staff person would say to you, okay, I got your order. Would you like a beverage with that? And you could say, yes, I'll have a Coke. And they would say, what kind? And you could say, root beer. And that would be fine. Not to me. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all. Root beer is not Coke. But to me, Coke is not a generic word. Coke is a very specific type of beverage. It's a brand and it's a cola. Well, in much of the American South now, Coke is a generic word for soft drink. Yeah, maybe it is something about Atlanta, because Atlanta has the international headquarters of Coca-Cola. And so, yeah, I think that's probably related, that presence, yeah, somehow expanded the word Coke into a generic. Okay, so I like that map a lot. Here's a similar one, but without the county borders, but showing you the pattern. And again, it's pretty similar pattern there, with the red shade here, again, being soda. All right, yes, we have a big country in land and in population, and it's big enough that word choices sometimes vary. If we were a small country, like the Netherlands that we've mentioned in other contexts, yeah, probably we wouldn't have a range of word choices like this. A small place, probably most people are going to use the same words. Okay, but we are a large place. Okay, but my main topic for today is toponymy. And toponymy is the study of place names. If you cover up the last letter Y in toponymy, then you have toponym, and that is a place name. A toponym is a place name. So toponymy, the study of place names. First, I'm going to give you kind of two bonus examples, and then I've got a set of categories that we're going to look at. So the first bonus example is the exonym. And here we want to think of X again as exit. Remember, we did exotic species in Australia, starting with EX. Here, EX, it's when there are different names for places based on whether you live there or you live in a different country. Okay, so here are some examples. Moscow is how we say the name of that city, but if you live there, you say Moskva. Now, to me, that's not that different. I mean, it's not hard to pronounce Moskva. And so I don't really think we had to somehow say something else. Why don't we all just say Moskva and it would be easy? Sometimes exonyms, I think, are a bit odd. Next example is Cologne, Germany, where if you're in Germany, you call that city Köln. Well, I guess that's a little harder to pronounce. I have to think about it. I have to form my mouth carefully to say Köln, but I could do it. I wouldn't have to switch to say something else. Well, we switched and somehow ended up with Cologne. Sometimes it's quite a bit different. Yeah, Finland and Suomi. All right, that's quite a large difference of what the natives say and what we say. And then Prague is another good example of a city that probably, again, couldn't we just all say Praha instead of Prague? Probably so. Where I grew up in Minnesota, there's a city, well, it's a town called New Prague, which is kind of funny too, because it really should be New Prague, but we in Minnesota Americanized it to say New Prague. All right, and you see the word at the bottom there, endonym. So if you are a native and you use the correct native word, that's an endonym. So for Russians, Moskva is an endonym. All right, and the second bonus one before we do categories is the tautological place name, where there is repetition. So for instance, once when we were in Los Angeles, family, we went for an outing and went to the La Brea Tar Pits. La Brea Tar Pits, it's an interesting place. There's a museum, but it's also a site where there are these tar pits and where animals have been trapped in the tar pits from way back when. And it's so sticky and stuff, they can't get out and they die. And so eventually their bones are left there and they're excavated and found interesting things. All right, the La Brea Tar Pits. What does La Brea mean? Well, it's not English, but it actually means tar. La Brea means tar. So when you say the La Brea Tar Pits, what you are actually saying is the tar pits. You're repeating yourself. Okay? Or, for instance, the Mississippi River. What does Mississippi mean? Mississippi is a Native American place name that is Big River. Mississippi means Big River. So when you say Mississippi River, what you literally are saying is the Big River River. Well, that's a little bit silly that we do that, right? We're just not often aware of it because we maybe don't know what that native or foreign language word means. Okay, so now I'm going to give you 13 categories, and we're going to find examples for each of these categories. And we're going to use Menti some more here. So the first category is named for a person. Places in America named for a person. If we think back to the Pacific Rim, remember we found a few of these places, in particular for explorers. James Cook got his name on the map, the Cook Strait between the North and South Islands of New Zealand. Abel Tasman got his name on the map, Tasmania, the big island of Australia. Yes, often explorers get their names on maps, but sometimes it's other people too. So now I would like you to put down in Menti an example you think of. In the United States, a place named for a person. A place named for a person. Think about it. Jot down an answer in Menti here. Is it working?
Taylor's saying she can't type. It's not allowing her to type.
Let's see. Maybe I have to. Oh, I'm sorry. I preempted it here. Let me give you a couple more criteria. So it might be that it's some heroic figure. Okay. Sometimes, yes, somebody who did something great, we honor them with a place name. Sometimes it's local. Lombard, our neighbor here to Glen Ellen, Lombard is named for Josiah Lombard, who was a bigger landowner at the time the village was founded. And yes, okay, explore. So I think now, yeah, here we go. Now, please type in an answer. An American place named for a person. Okay, we have a few answers coming in. I'm going to give you more seconds here. Let's say 15 seconds. Okay, here's some of your examples there. All right. Washington. Yes, Washington, of course, is named for George Washington, our first president. Jefferson City is Missouri. That's named for Thomas Jefferson, another president. Lincoln, Nebraska, named for another president. Vancouver, named for George Vancouver. All right, Gatlinburg is undoubtedly named for someone, Gatlin. Yes, and other good examples. Yes, places named for people. We've done that a lot in the United States. Yeah, it's fairly common across the world to honor somebody by naming a town or something else for them. So now it's a multiple choice Menti question. Which of these real American towns is named for a person? Named for a person. Okay, we have 8 answers so far, another 5 seconds here. All right, here's what you said. All right, we got a tie between Rockford and Joliet. All right, and remember, there's no problem if you're wrong or right. We're learning here today, so you never lose points on a Menti question. All right, so the correct answer is Joliet. Joliet is an explorer, a French explorer who came through this part of America and got his name on the map here in Illinois. Rockford is very tempting. It sounds like it could be someone's last name. In fact, back in the day, there was a great TV show called The Rockford Files, one of my favorites back then. But Rockford is not actually named for a person. There's a Rock River that goes through there, and ford refers to a place where, especially historically, people could cross a river without a bridge. Water would be shallow enough or slow enough that you could walk across or ride a horse across or take a wagon across. And historically, when people were doing that sort of thing, this was important to know where these places were. You didn't want to try to cross a river with your wagon and get tipped over and everybody drowns and all your stuff is lost, right? So to know where a ford is was useful. So Rockford was named for this place where you could ford the Rock River. All right, so that was number 1, places named for people. Number 2, category number 2, places named for other places. Named for other places. Now, we saw that with New Zealand, right? New Zealand was named for Zeeland, part of the Netherlands. We didn't state so, but New South Wales was named for Wales back in Britain, that part, not for the animals, not spelled that way, but Wales, Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales is one of those parts of Britain. New South Wales, named for that. Well, the word new is the huge clue here, isn't it? If the place name has the word new in it, then it's almost certainly going to be in this category. We're referencing that place. Now, places named for people, it may tell you something about the history of the location, which explorers came through, or it may tell you something about who was important at that time in history and was honored with a place name. Or it may be just on the very local scale, it tells you who founded the town. Here, it also probably tells you something historical. Who were the people exploring and thus used one of their familiar place names back in the old world to name the new place? Was it an explorer or an early settler who wanted to remember where they used to be, and this was the new version, the new place. All right, but sometimes new isn't mentioned. Paris, Texas, for instance, is named for Paris, France, but they didn't use new. All right, so let's try this one, multiple choice. Which of these named for another place? I didn't want to make it too easy for you by putting something with new in it, then it would be obvious. Give this a shot. Which is named for another place? Five seconds. Here's what you say. Okay, we got a mix of different answers there. We're not quite sure. Well, that's all right. And again, I didn't give you an easy one with the word new in it. No one chose Cherry Valley. That's good. That is not the correct answer. Galesburg probably is named for someone named Gale. There, that person's burg. Correct answer here is Zion. Zion is a biblical religious reference here. And in fact, sometimes places get named for religious context. Yes. America being predominantly Christian country, we have a number of references from the Bible that sometimes are place names. Other parts of the world may have different religious affiliations and different place names in that way. All right, category number 3 is locational. Locational. In the place name itself, we need to see north or south or east or west. The word is in the place name. Okay. So, could you now name a place in America that fits this category? That has the word north or the word south or the word east or the word west in it. Type in an answer here. Fifteen seconds. All right, let's see what you have here. Okay, yes, we have some states, don't we, that have the word north or south or east or west in them. And sometimes they're in pairs, right? So North and South Dakota go together, North and South Carolina to go together. Then there's West Virginia, yes. And there's no East Virginia, is there? But there is Virginia. So we still understand those two next to each other. And we have West Chicago. Yes, some of our towns and cities in America have this reference. And usually it's because it's sort of like a suburb, or it's like a second town was established later. The main town was there first, and then this other place became attached. Yeah, West Chicago obviously refers to Chicago and is the smaller place west of Chicago. And thankfully, it really is west of Chicago, and they got the direction correct. Bonus story, North Dakota. Every so often in North Dakota, some people get riled up and they want to change the name of their state. And there's a little bit of news about it for a while, and they want to change it to Dakota. They'd like to X out the north part and just have it Dakota. And they can say, you know, West Virginia, there's no East Virginia. And still everybody understands there's West Virginia and Virginia. So why not South Dakota, and Dakota? Well, their argument is that when it says north, it sounds like it's a really cold place, remote, uh, harsh climate, not much to do, far away. Oh, maybe that's true. Okay, maybe that's true. Yeah, well, it never gets very far, and it still is North Dakota. Yes. All right. I don't have a multiple choice question for you for number 3 because it would be obvious. It has to have north, south, east, or west in the place name. Sometimes there are interesting ones where the place is across a border, right? For instance, in Illinois, we have across the border St. Louis, Missouri, but in Illinois, we have East St. Louis, Illinois. Sometimes those are curious cases where the border is in between. All right, number 4 then is descriptive. The place name describes the location and usually in some physical geography, though this may also be historical. It may tell us what the place was like when it was named. Sometimes those things have changed. So one type of descriptive place name is the hydronym. So hydro, water. So a place with something about water in the name. And there are 2 examples that are very, very common in the United States: river and lake. Something river or river something. Lake something or something lake. Many towns have those names, describing that they're located right there next to the river or the lake. Sometimes it's some other water feature, but those are the most 2 common. Then there is a subcategory of number 4 here, the oronym. The oronym refers to elevation in some way. So hill or hills, mountain, mount, something like that, telling us about elevation, slope, height, that sort of thing. Again, telling us what that place was like when it was founded. And then there's vegetation. Most commonly, this is something like forest or some version of forest. COD is in Glen Ellen. Glen is a type of smaller forest. Glen Ellen is actually a mixture of 2 categories here because Ellen was the daughter of the founder, so it was named for her, but it's like her little forest. The Glen of Ellen, Glen Ellen. And sometimes we mix these combinations together. So here's your multiple choice question. Which of these answers is best for this category, the descriptive place name? Seconds. All right. In fact, most of us are going with all of the above, and that is the best answer. So if you pick any of them, that's true. It is a descriptive place name. In fact, all of them are. And you know, Forest Lake is a combination of 2, both descriptive, isn't it? Because it's talking about vegetation, forest, but lake as well for water. So Forest Lake, Illinois. And well, there's actually also a Lake Forest, Illinois, the other direction, isn't there? Number 5 is inspirational. Inspirational. This is not in the descriptive category. It is not intended to describe the place. It is making you feel good about the place. Happy, Texas. There's a town in Texas, Happy. The town without a frown. Everyone is happy in Happy, Texas. Well, maybe. Okay, but they'd like you to feel good about that place. Stepping a little bit farther geographically outside of North America for a moment. Okay, historically, there was a guy named Eric the Red. Eric the Red was a Viking, and he was the father of Leif Erikson, who many believe discovered America first. And Eric the Red and some of his guys were in Iceland. And they got in a big brawl and people died and they were banished from Iceland way back when. And they were said, well, banished, you have to leave. For some reason, they decided to be rambunctious. And instead of sailing east back to Northern Europe, they sailed west. And they hit this large landmass to the west of Iceland. And they wanted to have people follow them. They wanted other people to come and help them set up a settlement there that could be used. So they used the idea of the inspirational place name, and they called that place Greenland. Well, Greenland isn't very green. There's a little bit in the summer, the very southern end in the summer gets a little bit green. No, most of the time it's white. I did actually fly over Greenland once on a trip between Iceland and Minneapolis. And it was a clear enough day I could look down and see Greenland. And I saw ice and I saw snow and I saw some mountain or higher elevations. It was all ice and snow. But what if Eric the Red wanted people to follow him and he called the place Huge Mass of Snow and Ice Land? It would be descriptive, but is anybody following him? I don't think so. So he tried the inspirational place name, Greenland. Yet there are sometimes place names that seem puzzling. They're the opposite of inspirational. What if you got to this intersection in Tennessee? Which way would you turn? The choices don't seem very appealing. Well, the inspirational place name also reminds me of posters that you may see in offices sometimes, the inspirational type of poster. Okay, and sometimes there are memes about this, and there is a company that makes the opposite. It's called despair.com, and they make the de-inspirational posters like this one. Perseverance, the courage to ignore the obvious wisdom of turning back. Maybe you should turn back in that case. Take a look sometime at despair.com. Okay, category number 6 is Native American. Yes, there were other people here before the Europeans arrived, just as it was true in Australia and New Zealand, that there were other people there before the Europeans arrived. So, of course, in America, native tribal peoples had named places. Of course they had, like Mississippi that we've already mentioned. So sure, they've named places. Connecticut is an interesting one at the Long Tidal River. It's a long word and a long phrase. Connecticut. Oklahoma literally means red people. All right, so which one of these is a Native American place name? Make your choice here on Menti. 5 seconds. All right, you say Philadelphia. Okay, well, Lynchburg is probably named for someone named Lynch. New York is going to be named for another place because it's new. Turns out, though, Miami is a Native American name. It is actually a tribal name. And yes, there is Miami, Florida, of course, but there is also Miami of Ohio. Now, Philadelphia apparently tempted a lot of you. Well, it is definitely not an English word, but it is not an Native American word either. It does mean city of brotherly love. Well, that one would fit in this next category, foreign language. Yes, the English came over here and started the American colonies, but we had other peoples here before that too, or along with that too. The Spanish were here, the French were here, and sometimes we forget the Dutch were here too. And that New York originally was New Amsterdam before the Dutch let the British have it. So some of our places, yes, were named in foreign languages, not in English. Which one of these is a foreign language place name? Five seconds. You say Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Yes, that is correct. Fond du Lac means bottom of the lake in French, and that one is it. North Bay would be locational, wouldn't it? As north in the name. Charlottesville clearly is named for Charlotte. Yes. Well, here's a map, and we see Fond du Lac there in Wisconsin, and it is at the bottom. Well, at least on this map, it's towards the bottom. It is at the south end of Lake Winnebago. And by the way, we also see North Fond du Lac on the map there on that northwest side. So that's there too. Okay, number 8. Number 8 is an incident. Something happened at the place to give it its name. So there's some history here. We can learn some history perhaps by studying these sorts of place names. So again, multiple choice. Which one of these? Something happened there. Which one is an incident place name? All right, you say Shotgun Creek. Yes, that is the correct answer. Shotgun Creek. Something happened there. Guns and water, something happened there. There was a little battle, a little skirmish, something there. Similar is Battle Creek, Michigan. I think of Battle Creek, Michigan with breakfast cereals. At least they used to. I think they still do make a lot of breakfast cereals there. Similar thing. Yes. All of these are real place names. In fact, yes, there is a place called Intercourse, Pennsylvania, which obviously refers to where two roads crossed. And that is how they named the place. Two roads crossed there. All right, number 9 is food. Something about food in the place name. Well, certainly that may be agricultural. It may be a product grown there. So Orange County, California, obviously is in this category, named for all the orange groves that they had there and still have there. Sometimes there's my example. Sometimes it is production of something, okay? But all right, give this one a shot. Which of these is named for food? All right, you say halfway there between Amarillo and Pearland. Amarillo sounds a little bit like armadillo, which could be roadkill food, but the answer here would be Pearland. Not Pearl and, but Pearland. So pears, in this case, apples are very common in this case. There's Appleton, Wisconsin. There's Apple Valley, Minnesota, other places. Often it's agricultural. Half Hell, North Carolina. It's a real place, but man, that is a weird name. All right, now number 10 is more difficult, less obvious. It is folk etymology. It means the place name has changed, but slowly over time. It has evolved. It didn't just change in a moment. It wasn't an intentional, okay, we're going to switch it from this to this. No, it evolved. So when this town was first founded, it was named for the founder's wife, Dora. So it was Dora Moore, South Dakota. Well, over time, it evolved. I don't know, maybe people didn't like Dora. Maybe two words, people would sometimes would just kind of naturally shorten things. Well, anyway, it evolved and it is now Ardmore, South Dakota. You can see that, yeah, there's some link to Dora Moore, but yeah, it changed to Ardmore. All right, well, okay, which of these? This is a good time to remind you that we never lose points for getting Menti questions wrong. Which one of these sounds like it slowly changed? "15 seconds. You say, all right, well, we're across the board here. So yeah, well, this one is one of the ones that's less clear. So not surprising, you would have picked some different ones. So it certainly seems possible that Gorska evolved into Gross, but no, Gross, Nebraska was named for a man named Ben Gross, at one of the founders. Tidewater, no, the place is actually called Tight Squeeze because it is a narrow roadway that passes through there. Queen's Cheek, no, the place is very hard to pronounce, and it actually is native term for blackfish. So it's the first one. It's Alaska. The natives named the place Aguanalaska, Agunalask, something like that, meaning the shores where the sea breaks its back. But then the land became Russian lands, and they tried to pronounce that word using Russian letters, and they made it sound like Unalashka. Well, eventually Russia sold Alaska to America, and we then tried to pronounce that word into English, and we came up then with Unalaska. So that's the one that evolved over time. All right, number 11 is coined, simply made up, simply made up. And I'm going to give you two subcategories here. One is, yeah, just just made up a word. So there is a little village, it's a very small place, called Trevlac, Indiana. Almost by random chance, I have driven through Trevlac once. Well, the story is that John Calvert founded the little village, and he used his name backwards. So Trevlac is Calvert backwards. He just made it up that way. But a second type of coined word is called a portmanteau. That's a nice French word, and we're going to use two or more names or two or more words and smoosh them together. That's what a portmanteau does. We're putting two or more together. So which of these is not, change the question, which of these is not a portmanteau? Five seconds. All right, and we're going with why Arizona as not a portmanteau. That is correct. Calexico is California plus Mexico. Calexico. Canova is actually three. Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia put together, Canova. Texarkana is Texas plus Arkansas, Texarkana. And nearby, Norridge is something like North Park and Park Ridge, something like that put together. Why is not a portmanteau? It's an interesting little story, though. The thing is, the people of this village had always called their place Y, with just one letter, Y. And then they wanted to make it an official place in the state of Arizona. So they applied to name it Y, and they were told, no, all places have to have at least three letters. You can't just use the letter Y. So they said, all right, well, then we're spelling it W-H-Y, Y. And that's the little story about that place. All right, here's a map of portmanteau towns, cities, villages across the United States. And you can see that many of them are on borders and thus are choosing to combine border names to create that name. So for us in Illinois, Ileana Heights, south or a bit of south of Chicago, clearly Ileana is merging Illinois and Indiana together, right? All right, number 12 is the mistake. This is not like folk etymology. This is, there was a one-time error, and people, oops, okay, now that's what the place is called. Maybe it was on an official document and it was spelled wrong, or maybe it was something. There was a mistake. Which one of these is in the mistake category? You say Toadsuck, Arkansas. That's what I would have guessed also until I looked it up. They actually did want to name it Toadsuck. Hard to figure that one out. Snowball. Yes, Snowball is the correct answer here. They wanted it to be named Snowbell, and there's a typo. There's a little spelling error, something, and so On the official paperwork, it came out as Snowball. They wanted to be Snowbell. Okay. What I like here, though, not on this answer sheet here, but one I like, interesting story, is a place in Indiana. Place in Indiana, they wanted to have a post office. See, it was just a small settlement, but it had been getting bigger. And they thought, if we can just get a post office, this will really put us on the map. This will really help our settlement grow. So they got the paperwork together and sent it in to the post office officials. Well, of course, place name was one of those categories. One thing they had to fill in on the form was the name of your place. What is your village name? And they wanted the place to be named Comet. C-O-M-E-T, Comet. But apparently the person filling in the paper had bad handwriting. So when the official, probably far away, got the paperwork, looked it over, wasn't quite sure what they wanted the name of the place to be. So he wrote them a note. Do you want your place to be named Comet? Well, yes, they did. That was it. That was what they wanted it to be named. So they wrote on the form correct and sent it back. And the name of the place is Correct, Indiana, by mistake, which I think is a fun little ironic story. Next is number 13. There's a legend, there's a myth, there's a story, there's a tale. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but there is some sort of story. And there is one for Canton, South Dakota. When this was a small settlement before it had a name, well, yeah, again, they decided they needed a name. So everybody kind of gathered together and talked it through. They said, we could name this for a person. We could pick a famous person and honor them. So they thought of some examples, but, they just weren't very enthusiastic. They couldn't agree on one person. So they said, no, we won't do that. Okay, we could name it New something. Well, new what? Couldn't decide on that one either. They said, well, we could describe our place. Nah. Well, they fussed and fussed, and they just could not get a consensus. They could not agree. So finally, one person said, all right, we got to name our place, but we can't agree. So let's just do something arbitrary, sort of random. Let's take the place on the other side of the globe. Whatever's exactly on the other side of the globe, that's what we'll name our place. And everybody feeling like, well, we're not succeeding. Well, let's try it. Okay, and they decided that was Canton, China. And so they named their place Canton, South Dakota. It's an interesting little story. If it's true, they're bad geographers, because Canton, China is not exactly on the other side of the planet from Canton, South Dakota. Okay, but that's the story. Which of these has a story, is a legend category? Yeah, something went wrong. Then for some reason, I'm not seeing it. Well, let's see. I don't know what happened there. Okay, well, I'll tell you. The answer is Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Has a story. Back in the day on TV, there used to be a program called Truth or Consequences. Truth or Consequences. And I found it to be sort of a forerunner of some of today's reality shows. The sort of ones where there's some adventure, some game, something you're trying to do. Sometimes it's a wacky, you win a prize, those sort of things. And before that, even, there was a radio show, Truth or Consequences, that had some of the same kinds of things going on. And one year they had a contest on this radio show. And they said, if there's any towns or villages out there that will permanently change their name to Truth or Consequences, we will give you prizes and a lot of publicity on our show. And a village called Hot Springs, New Mexico, said, yeah, we'll do it. And so they permanently changed their name. Still is Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Yes. Oblong, no particular story. It is just that when the town was founded, there's a kind of prairie nearby that has an oblong shape to it. Quamba sounds like it might be related to me, but it is a native of place name, and it refers to kind of a muddy place. Raisin, of course, would be for food. Hey, well, bonus fact about place names and about me. This place in Norway, Kvammen, it's just a hillside. There's not really any, there's village, there's no town there, it's just a hillside. But this is where my ancestors can be traced back to. And I've been on this hillside and I've seen a small little ruins, really, of a, not really even a house, but a kind of foundation of stones and rocks where there was some kind of home. Okay, and my people come from this hillside named Kvammen. Okay, so my Norwegian family relatives, the direct ones, have the last name Kvamme. You take this name Kvammen and you take the N off of it, and that's the last name, Kvamme. Well, when my father's father was born, well, he was born in Norway, and that was his last name then. But one of his brothers went to America to seek his fortune and changed the family last name to Q-U-A-M, from K-V-A-M-M-E to Q-U-A-M. It's a little puzzling. Maybe he thought it was Americanizing it, but yeah, it's somewhat common that people arriving in America would sometimes change their names that way. So when my grandfather later followed his brother to America, he too changed the last name so it would match his brother's name. Okay, so in my case, the place name led to my name. All right, so that is today's thing. That is geography of language. Patterns of language in America are not random.